Welcome to Light Up with Shua podcast. This is part one with Rabbi Neal Gold on the topic of fasting from a Jewish perspective. Part two will be available tomorrow as well. Please remember to visit Light Up with Shua website and check out what I'm offering for you this year. If you like this topic and are benefiting from it, please do let me know, and you are welcome to leave a comment below this podcast or wherever you are watching or listening. I would really appreciate if you can leave a constructive review as well. I thank you and enjoy the conversation. So, thank you, Rabbi Gold, for being here. Please, can you briefly introduce in your own words who you are and what do you do?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, Shwa, and shalom. It's a
Walaikum salam.
real privilege
Shalom.
with you. It's
Yes.
wonderful to see you again.
Thank you.
So my name is Neal Gold. I'm a rabbi working in Greater Boston community. I wear a couple different hats in the community. I'm the immediate past president of the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis, which is an umbrella organization for over 300 rabbis from all the different movements within contemporary Judaism. I'm adjunct faculty at Hebrew College in Newton. I'm the campus rabbi and Jewish chaplain at Babson College in Wellesley. And perhaps the most interesting thing I do is similar to you. I have an online presence as well. I run an online platform for Jewish spiritual education called A Tree with Roots.
Yes.
And that's based out of my home here in Natick. And I work on
Excellent.
that's as well.
Excellent.
And I love doing interfaith conversations like these. Involved with the Miller Center for Interfaith Leadership and Learning at Hebrew College in Newton as well. So these sorts of dialogues, I think, are so important, and I also happen to think they're a lot of fun.
Thank you. Yes, same here. That's why we are here. So, people, you should be ready for some laughs and some witty jokes here and there. So, also
Up to
coming, sorry, not coming back to your tree, the blog you write, right? So I will leave the link below our, this podcast because I went on it and I really liked it. It's brief. I read about your fasting piece that you had written, and it was pretty, focused and to the point, and it's enough to get some idea about it. But our topic is about fasting, and this is the series I'm doing this year. And I hope I can glean out of people who are professionals or scholars and people like you who are writing and practicing, so we can learn something and find the similarities and differences and benefits of this practice. So, Rabbi, I will begin with the simple question: do you fast?
Yeah, I fast at the prescribed times during the calendar year in Jewish tradition. Fasting is a very important tradition that goes back to the earliest times, to antiquity in Jewish life. It's considered an important spiritual practice.
Yes.
But I think most Jews today associate fasting with specific calendar dates on the year. There are major fasts and minor fasts. And for me personally, fasting is a very important spiritual tool in our toolkit for greater spiritual awareness.
All right. If I recall, but you are here the expert. So Yom Kippur is the one of the major fast that you do. Can you talk
Yeah,
about
sure.
that a little?
Yom Kippur is certainly the most famous fast day in the Jewish calendar. I'll back up for 1 second before I
Sure.
talk about Yom Kippur, and I'll say in the Jewish calendar there are two major fasts and several minor fasts,
Okay.
and I'll explain what I mean by those terms.
Please.
Major and minor in this regard means a major fast is a 24, actually a 25-hour fast that goes from sunset to sunset, a full calendar day.
So you don't eat anything in there
Right,
and don't drink also?
correct.
Oh, so it
And,
is
and there are
closer
2 days in the calendar year that are those major fasts. I'll flesh that out a
Sure.
little bit because actually you fast from other things besides food. Um, the major fasts are Yom Kippur, which takes place in the fall. It's the Day of Atonement.
Yep.
And in the middle of the summer, there's a date called Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which is a day of historical calamity and mourning. Um, and that's a major fast as well. There are a series of minor fast days throughout the year, which are frankly much lesser known and less widely observed in
Hmm.
Jewish life, that go from that go during daylight hours, from sunrise to sunset.
Hmm. Okay.
So Yom Kippur, of course, is the most famous, well-known, and most frequently observed fast day in Jewish life. It is very widely observed, even by people who consider themselves pretty secular people and don't observe a lot of the other Jewish holidays and rituals. Will go out of their way to say, "Of course, I fast on Yom Kippur." That's
So,
how important it is in Jewish consciousness.
so that is like more calm, as you said. I didn't think that. Yeah, I thought secular mindsets didn't really, fast. So why is that? Why do you think it is that they
Because
do that?
it's such a part of identity with
Okay.
Jewish life, with Jewish people, and with Jewish history.
Okay. So
That
it
it is a
connects.
pretty strong statement to say, I don't step. Even for someone who is a secular person, it's a very strong statement of detachment from Jewish people and Jewish history to say, I don't fast on Yom Kippur. And,
Oh, okay.
and Judaism, as I understand Islam, is made up of like two large components. There's the religious component and there's the peoplehood component. Just as
Exactly.
Muslims are part of an ummah,
Yes.
Jews are part of Am Yisrael, the people, the Jewish
Mm,
people, everywhere where to be found on the earth.
exactly. Can you say something about the word Yom Kippur? What is it? Does it mean exactly?
Sure, the word Yom means day,
Yeah.
um, and Kippur, which is a really interesting word here, means atonement from sin.
Oh, okay.
And um, in the biblical context, in the ancient context, it meant one thing, but it was in the sacrificial history of ancient Israel going back 3,000 and more years. But um, but for Jews today, Yom Kippur is a day of atonement. It's a day of deep introspection, of looking into yourself, of taking stock of the different relationships in your life with the people who are most important to you, with the world around you, with the community around you, and within and with God. And it's a day for repairing the hurts, the damages we've done to those relationships, for taking stock, taking ownership of our choices and our behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm dancing around a certain word, and that's the word sin.
Hmm.
We're taking stock of sins, damages that we've inflicted on ourselves and others in the world around us, and trying to repair those things.
So, can you give any examples? Like, how do you do it? Because I don't think you want to
Okay,
even.
so let's start with the second half of that
Yeah.
question. Who is this applicable to?
Yes.
In Jewish law, it's equally applicable to men and women, and you become responsible for observing laws when you reach the age of 13, which is
Mm.
called bar mitzvah,
Yes.
or for girls, bat mitzvah.
But
When
okay.
mitzvot are Jewish religious obligations or commandments from the Torah. And when you reach the age of majority, age 13, those things become your legal responsibility.
Hmm.
So, according to Jewish legal tradition, anyone over the age of 13 and one day is legally responsible for doing the, all of the rituals associated with Yom Kippur.
Hmm.
Now, you say, does everybody do this? I'm
Hmm.
giving you from the Jewish religious
Yes.
point of view. There's an old, saying that you have two Jews, you have three opinions, that there's a wide diversity of observance and
True.
behavior in Jewish life. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to give you the consensus answer here.
Okay.
So how does it work on Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is a pretty spiritually intense day. It's a day, um, certainly, first of all, when, secular day-to-day work is prohibited. And then we'll talk about the meaning of fasting. Fasting is just one of the tools in the spiritual arsenal of Yom Kippur to affect this idea of atonement and repair.
Hmm.
Um, the other the other big ones are tefillah, which means prayer. It's a full day of prayer. The Yom Kippur liturgy is very deep and involved and rich and long. So it's
Hmm.
really a full day of prayer. And the other one, the other tool in the arsenal is called tzedakah, which I know is very similar to the Arabic word.
Yes,
So,
sadaqah. Yes.
tzedakah means giving, means charitable giving
Hmm.
for the purpose of making the world a more just, a more fair, a more compassionate sort of place. And I always think of that as sort of like putting your money where your mouth is. That it's
Hmm.
one thing to pray,
Yeah.
it's one thing to be spend a day in deep introspection, looking into yourself. It's another thing to say, and I'm going to change by doing an act of
Hmm.
goodness as
Hmm.
well. And that's where tzedakah comes in.
Hmm.
So Yom Kippur is an amalgamation of all these things, of prayer, of fasting, of tzedakah, of looking deep within. They
Hmm.
all play off of one another,
Hmm.
hopefully with the goal of emerging as a healthier and better person.
So is that practice then thought of being practiced throughout the year? Is like I'm trying to give like what I understand about Islam and Ramadan, which is a month of fasting. So that's why I asked, like, what ages can one fast, and that is very similar to what we do in Muslim tradition. So going to that, is that continued in some form or shape, or is just
You
that
know,
day?
there's prayers for atonement and forgiveness and stuff that happen in the daily liturgy every day of the year.
Okay.
This idea of being an introspective, reflective person, of course, is a virtue every day of the year.
Mhm.
So some people ask,
Mm.
I'm sure this is a sort of universal question. Then what do we need holy days for?
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
something you're supposed to do every day. And
Hmm.
I think the answer comes down to something about human nature. I
Hmm.
mean, we know that every day is supposed to be a day of looking within and trying to repair ourselves and what we've damaged and things
Hmm.
like that. Human nature, though, is we're busy people.
Yes,
We go to
we
work,
need reminders.
preoccupations day to day. We
Yeah.
go to work, we go to school, and all of that. The holy days become important by setting aside a whole day exclusively for this purpose of self refinement.
Mm. True, true. That's very. And by the way, I just want to come to Yom. Yom is also an Arabic word. In Arabic, it is the day, and as it's in Hebrew, right? So,
Sure. One of the things I love that come out of these Jewish Muslim encounters is all the uh, all the overlap in terms of vocabulary, but also in sorts of ideas and spiritual reflection,
yes.
even and even the legends and myths that we share.
Yes, yes. And even defining a God, like how we say God, I need to understand that when I see, when it's written in English, G, and then there is a space or it's left blank, and then
Yeah,
there is D, it is the respect towards God that you don't want to just write it
yeah,
anywhere.
that's
Is
right. The idea is that even when you write or speak the name of God, there's an inherent power and holiness in that that should make you self-aware. So we're careful about writing the name of God onto a document, for instance.
exactly. And I think that is one of the major commonality, that we believe in one God.
Absolutely.
And that is very, very powerful in my view, in the world we live today, especially in my,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Okay.
Should we talk a little more about fasting?
Yes, please, please
Like
go ahead.
the abstention from fasting is more than just food,
Yes,
although
that's what you were
food is
saying.
perhaps the
Hmm.
most obvious part
Hmm.
of it. There are two Hebrew words that are found in the Bible that are connected to fasting. The word som is perhaps the most common. Som means it means to fast.
Oh,
It means
same
to
in Arabic. Yeah,
it means
exactly.
cessation from doing something,
Exactly.
stopping from doing something. Um, in the Jewish tradition, post Bible, the fast of Yom Kippur means refraining from five different appetites. Food and drink is just the first and most obvious, but it means Yom Kippur is refraining from food and drink, from sexual relations, from bathing for 24 hours, from anointing oneself with oils, which doesn't make much sense in the
Mm.
21st century, but in ancient
And
times that was very important. Most people today means like perfume and cologne and stuff. And the fifth one is a little bit bizarre. It means we refrain from wearing leather shoes. Of course, in 2,000 years ago, when these laws coalesced, that meant from making yourself very comfortable, you know. But
Exactly.
in modern times, you know, it's a little bit of a weird rule. But you can go to a synagogue on Yom Kippur, or go through very Jewish neighborhoods anywhere in the world on Yom Kippur, and you'll see something very interesting, and that is people who are very dressed up in their holiday finest clothes and wearing like sneakers or sandals on their feet.
Uh-huh.
Because 2,000 years ago, the ancient rabbis
Hmm.
said part of the fast is don't wear leather shoes.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit bizarre, but I don't complain about that. I like
Mhm.
wearing sneakers on Yom Kippur.
Right, right.
It could be a long day.
So,
So the
yeah,
fast is from all these different sorts of appetites and comforts, not just food.
excellent, excellent.
The
So,
other
yeah,
Hebrew,
overall,
yeah,
it is like to stay away, realize and be aware of your life and try to take a break from comforts, basically. Can be, maybe it should have been said no sneakers, no shoes, you know. But, anyways,
right.
no, okay.
I think in its context, it's about from making yourself too comfortable, a little bit of discomfort, whether it's in the pit of your stomach or on your feet or, you know,
Mm,
elsewhere,
mm,
is good for spiritual awareness.
mm. Okay. And you were going to go on for
I,
more.
well, you know, so the other word for
Yeah.
fast that's found in the Torah is ta'anit. And
Tanit.
ta'anit
Mm,
more explicitly means self-denial. Things
mm,
pleasurable, refraining from doing them, even afflicting yourself a bit, making yourself uncomfortable for the sake of this deeper spiritual awareness.
mm. Give me an example.
Um, okay. Um, this comes down to the deeper meaning of what fasting is all about, which is what I wrote in that piece that I
Yes.
sent. Um, I think fasting is for three things. And refraining from all of these different appetites achieves three different things. One is it's a day of stepping away from physical things to focus on spiritual things.
Mm-hmm,
All those things are inherently material, whether we're talking about clothes or food or sex. Those
mm-hmm,
are essentially physical things. And a day like Yom Kippur is about a day saying, I'm a spiritual creature first and foremost, and devoting to matters of the spirit. Um, the second thing I think that fasting is about discipline,
mm,
and in the context of sin and repair and atonement, you think about um, how many of our problems come from the need to satiate our appetites,
true.
our physical appetites, our sexual appetites, our appetites for power and control and stuff like that. Fasting and refraining from those things is a way of saying, I can control my appetites. My appetites don't control me.
Hmm.
That's really important.
That's very good. Yeah.
Really important. And I think Yom Kippur becomes a day of reflection of how many things did I damage myself or in my relationships or in my life because I let my appetites control me.
Hmm.
The third thing, and we can flesh each of these things
Yeah,
out,
sure.
but the third thing is it's about empathy.
Hmm.
That it's a good thing to make yourself uncomfortable once in a while because it reminds you that there's other people who feel that way and not of their own choosing. So when I'm fasting, you know, the first couple of hours, don't even notice it. And then 11 or 12 o'clock in
Hmm.
the morning, you start to feel that rumble in your stomach when you realize that you missed breakfast. And it's supposed to remind you, you know, there's hungry people not very far from here.
Yep.
There's
True.
hungry people within a mile
Yep.
of wherever we
True.
are, let alone all over the state and all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to say, I feel compassionate for them. Empathy is a totally different thing. Empathy means I've felt to a tiny infinitesimal degree that sort of discomfort. I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want other people to feel that way either. So it makes us more empathetic and generous creatures. And that's really important also.
So, do you think that um, brings the motivation to do something, whether it's financial, whether it's physically helping somebody, or taking food to someone, or giving charity enough so that you can feed them? Does that action come up? with feeling that way? Do you
Well,
think so?
optimally, we all know it doesn't work that way with everybody,
Right,
right? But
right.
optimally, I think that's the idea,
Mm-hmm.
that it's supposed to, all these things kind of come together in
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's spiritually open, I
Hmm.
believe. And it makes you more disciplined, more self-aware, and also more generous and more compassionate to other people.
Mm,
Is
mm.
that the idea? And
Right.
all those different strands together.
True, true. Do you have any more examples of yours? Like how is it for you? Like how many years you have been, let's even if we don't quantify it, is every year better than before for you in your personal experience? Like have you, can you share some story or something that you think that has really made a difference when you
About
do
fasting.
this ritual? Yeah.
Well, my personal experience is that like varies from year to year. That some years I find it uh, um, rather innocuous in the sense that it's not very difficult for me to fast.
Hmm.
Usually that's involved in if I'm working,
Hmm.
if I'm leading a community in prayer, and if I'm teaching, and if I'm doing programs for Jewish communities about the meaning of Yom Kippur, the day can fly by like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
I find the hardest part of fasting is often when there's nothing to do.
Ah.
You have a gap on Yom Kippur afternoon between prayer services, between classes, when there's kind of nothing happening and you're sitting around the house. That's when I find that I say to myself, wow, I'm really hungry. It's all
Yep.
mindful.
Yeah.
I suppose it's all about mindfulness. If
True.
your mind
True.
is attuned to the other, other priorities of the day, then I find it's very effective. I find if I'm sitting around with nothing to do, then
Yeah.
fasting becomes difficult.
So is there a law that you can't do anything, or you can be working or doing something while you are observing the fast?
The working that I refer to was like the rabbi working, like
Okay.
like
Okay.
leading a community in prayer
Right. Right.
or teaching a
But
class.
otherwise, law
That yeah, it
from
goes
the.
back to the Torah itself that says it's a day of refraining from physical labor, from your
Okay.
occupations and stuff like that.
Okay. So is that what it is on Fridays when Jews observe the
Oh, that's a nice connection.
right Sabbath?
Yeah, well, so the Hebrew word is Shabbat,
Shabbat. Sorry,
and the English
Shabbat.
word is Sabbath.
Yeah.
They're connected to each other,
Yeah.
obviously. And yeah, that too is a weekly, the day of rest in
Right.
Jewish parlance means a day of refraining from work.
Right.
Um, and Yom Kippur is called a Shabbat Shabbaton in Hebrew, which means like a Sabbath squared,
Ah.
or the
Yep.
Sabbath of Sabbaths.
Yeah.
So,
Father
yeah,
of Sabbath. Maybe. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So but can you read or do anything? Can you read Torah and all?
for sure.
Okay.
Work in the Jewish legal language refers specifically like physical labor or
Right.
earning money or being
Right.
creative.
Mm.
Um, Reading and study is always a priority in Jewish
Okay.
life.
Excellent. Excellent. And coming to this, while we are talking about fasting, and that's what we are going to talk, is there a tradition that I learned recently from a rabbi online that you have? Do you do that Monday and Thursday fasting?
It's very unusual. I've heard about it too.
Okay.
Uh, this goes back to the idea of tanit. There was another meaning of fasting in ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
That fasting was also like kind of a personal pietistic practice for greater spiritual awareness that could take place
Mm-hmm.
throughout the year. It was also something that was done in time of calamity.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an impending war or a famine, or if the rains hadn't come on time, in ancient times, the community would call for a communal fast. There's an entire volume of the Talmud, which is the great masterpiece of Jewish literature from about 1500 years ago, called Ta'anit, fasting. And it's not about Yom Kippur. That gets another book to itself.
Mm.
Ta'anit was about communal prayers. Um, so there were times when Jews adopted fasting as sort of a personal act of piety.
Mm.
I would say that it's very unusual today.
Mm.
Not unheard of, but unusual. And
Mm.
one of those practices was fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, not every Monday and Thursday of the year, but ones at particular times of the year, like after major holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in Jewish history, there was a great spiritual revolution that took place in the 1700s in Europe. Um, Up until that time, like in medieval times, there were many pious Jews who did ascetic practices, who would fast during the week, who would afflict themselves physically and stuff like that. There was a teacher in Poland in the 1700s, Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, who's more famously known as the Baal Shem Tov, who said this was a time of great anguish for Jews. There was a lot of massacres, there was a lot of poverty, there was a lot of starvation. And he said, I don't want Jews to do that anymore. There are many paths to serving God, and I propose that the path to serving God should be through joy, through song, through uplift, not through suffering. That he started is called Hasidism, and it remains a major spiritual movement that affects Jews in all the different Jewish movements today. I think with the Baal Shem Tov, the idea of fasting as a way of personal, weekly, spiritual practice kind of fades away.
Okay.
But not 100%.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was good. So do you recommend when you're leading your in your teaching or in your so how do you differentiate when you're teaching versus you are kind of helping as a chaplain and all that in any area that you are working? Do you recommend people or students to fast?
Absolutely. I think it's really important, especially on those prescribed days in the Jewish calendar, I think, for all the reasons that we've talked about, and another one, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, but for all those spiritual reasons, as well as for the idea of just affirming identity and associating yourselves with Jewish people all over the world. I think it's very, very important at those specific times. With a caveat. The caveat is it's only for healthy people.
Yes.
All of the Jewish laws, all the Jewish law codes always have a little asterisk.
Right.
Say, by the way,
Yeah.
if you're weak, if you're sick, if you're somebody who fasting would damage yourself, they don't say we recommend that you don't. They say you're forbidden from fasting.
Yep.
You're forbidden from it, because fasting is supposed to be an ultimate act of health, of spiritual health, and you're not supposed to hurt yourself, damage yourself through it. So there's always that caveat.
Yeah. So physical part is part of it also, like from the health point of view. Now I'm sure you know about intermittent fasting and all the trend that is going on nowadays. But with intermittent fasting, that is very very secular and very limited in terms of just physical. That's what I have learned so far, and it's like a trend. So do you do this fasting? Do you?